Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. Welcome to the inaugural RezScore SuccessCast. This is the very first in a series we've been talking about doing for quite some time, and we're pretty excited about all the great stuff we're going to be sharing with you. This episode is basically going to be an introduction, but it will include some very useful information. We're going to be covering a couple of topics which you can use to achieve success in your job search, as well as beyond in your career and even your life. In particular, we're going to be delving into a framework or an anatomy of what we consider a successful life hack or job search hack, and some principles you should keep in mind when you're doing so. We'll also be going into Cialdini's principles of influence, which you should be using all the time, but particularly in your job search. And finally, I'm going to be introducing who I am and why you should bother paying attention to me. And of course, all this ties back to our mission. We want all of the people in our community, all of our family at RezScore, to be simply more successful than anyone who is not paying attention to us. Ideally, we will become so good at what we do that we're going to be the only job search platform that you need to achieve career success. And we are pursuing this mission largely by providing the leading technology and analytics platform for your job search. Remember, RezScore is always free, always instant, and always confidential. And of course, while we are waiting to get this underway, we'll talk about many of the great features that we have over at RezScore. We really have a phenomenal variety of tools that you can use to hack your job search. We have our resume grader, which is something to behold. It's currently the most accurate resume grader used by governments and schools to judge the power of your resume. We provide salary estimates, tips for improvement, and skills analysis. Again, this is all free, all instant, and all confidential. And in fact, we're building out a new job search platform that's becoming quickly the only job resource you're ever going to need. And it's built entirely on our community feedback. So job searching used to be awful, and we found some already amazing ways to fix it. For example, job searching used to be very lonely. You would frequently take your resume and throw it into what we call the job search black hole, where you would just watch it disappear. We've actually fixed this. We've implemented a receipt and live tracking system, so anybody can see the entire status of their job post and job application the entire way through, just like you know exactly where your FedEx package is, and if it gets lost, you know at least where in the chain it broke down. Additionally, we're the first job search platform that can actually pay you for using it. What do we mean by this? We're allowing employers to set bounties on their jobs, and if you help fulfill it, you are eligible for a piece of this. So there's currently $50,000 on the table for anyone who can help fill it. Just last week, we added a great new one from a startup based out of Philadelphia. They're looking for mobile developers anywhere, ideally Philadelphia, but could be anywhere in the US. They have a very cool new platform that they're building out, basically to integrate the Internet of Things with providing mobile streaming video services. So it's going to be a very ambitious project. I can only talk so much because they're still at a fairly confidential phase. But if you're able to join, they can provide competitive salary and an equity slice. So it would be well worth your while to actually take a look at this job. This is, of course, available at jobs.rezscore.com/redballoon. So let's get into the meat of this podcast here. With so many great tools that we've already built, you may be wondering, why are we bothering with what we're calling the SuccessCast? Basically a periodic streaming cast in which we talk about some principles for how you can achieve career success. And why bother? Well, I'm going to relate a quick story which actually ties into the very first actionable tip that we're going to be really focusing on this cast, which is how to structure a successful hack. And we'll get into in a second what that means. But my inspired to basically do this by my colleague Tarek, who is also a very talented entrepreneur. I asked him to take a look over our site, and he asked us, why is there no video? And I looked at myself and I was like, of course. Very good point. I don't personally watch a lot of video. I barely watch YouTube. I don't watch much TV, but I recognize that video is incredibly popular. So I said, yes, of course, as always, Tarek, you're right, we should do some video. So I set it work in After Effects. We recorded a demo of one of our new job search features, which we finally posted the video a few weeks ago to YouTube. You should check it out. It's very amazing. It's using Word2Vec to basically identify skills that you might be missing in your resume and that you should be pursuing. The video was very popular, did quite well, but it took me months upon months to edit this video. And I wasn't even doing anything fancy. I was adding a little overlay text and maybe looking at some volume levels. But I said, I can't spend months recording a video each time I want to release something. I'm a bit of a perfectionist by nature, but also as an entrepreneur, I have to always be shipping. So these two are incompatible. So I essentially implemented what I'm considering a hack. And here's where I'm going to get in this first lesson of what is a hack and how you develop it. The hack that I implemented, which is so simple it might not even seem like a hack, but I would argue that it is indeed a hack, is that I should, instead of doing pre-recorded video, I should move to doing a live stream. That's it. Very simple. Because doing a live stream means that people are expecting a much lower production quality. I can mess up completely and it just adds to the charm. Whereas if it's a YouTube video and it's something off about it, no good. So this is where, to satisfy my inner autist, I said, we'll just lower the bar, we'll do a live stream, and then we'll get lots of extra video content, which we can post to YouTube. We can rip out the audio and make it a podcast. All of a sudden, we're getting a bunch of amazing stuff relative short order. Now, why is this a hack? So I've been talking for a long time offline with my friends about what people can do to hack their way to success. And they go by many different names. You can call them sort of systems. You can call them developing positive habits. But anyway about it, they're all the same thing, where you're basically trying to implement internal systems that can be used in your personal or professional life to help yourself towards something. And I've come up with a very basic framework here, which I'm considering the anatomy of a growth hack. And of course, with all frameworks like this, there are a bunch of different ways you can and should go about considering this. So I don't consider this to be complete by any stretch of the imagination, but this is a great start. And what are the three facets of a successful hack that you should be looking to? Well, first of all, I've identified that it should be something which is likely to produce compounding benefits. This is what Nassim Taleb refers to as convex benefits. But essentially, the positive benefits should accrue a greater amount over time. So you get that ability to have the kind of stone rolling downhill, gathering no moss effect. The second is that it should be able to provide diffuse benefits. So it's best off if you're able to basically take a simple job hack and not just have it, if it goes well, produce one or two good things, but produce a multiple of good things. So one, compounding efforts, two, diffuse benefits, and three, it should be easy. It should just fit so naturally into your day-to-day life that it actually makes your life easier, not harder. So let's go back and look at the very simple job hack, or I should say the very simple hack that I implemented to do live streams instead of pre-recorded videos as an attempt to make things easier. Does it produce, number one, compounding benefits? Yes, absolutely. If I just record this video and I'm done, some people who listen to this, probably very few, because the first one, they'll take a look and they'll say, okay, yeah, that's actually kind of interesting, that's kind of useful, but one and done. Whereas if I'm able to do this with any great regularity, all of a sudden I'm going to build up the world's greatest video series on how to become successful. So definitely the whole as I add more and more videos becomes increasingly powerful. Additionally, this is going to be able to help amplify other social media and blog posts that we do, so we'll be able to draw attention throughout our ecosystem. And the more of these videos, the more traction that it gets over time, the better. Second, is this providing diffuse benefits? I would argue absolutely. By doing these, I will be developing a fantastic skill set. I will become better at live video streaming. I'll be improving my speaking skills. If I'm able to do some of the interviews, which I'm looking at doing for some of these future SuccessCasts, I'll be developing my interviewing skills and my network. We'll be able to get better interaction with users. I'll be able to pay better attention to video production qualities. I might grow my user base, and we'll be developing a lot of video content. So I've set myself up with multiple paths for this to become a very great experiment. And unsuccessful people might look at this and say, "Oh, well, you might not have a huge audience necessarily. Wouldn't that be losing?" Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I'll get an audience, but even if I don't, there's all these other benefits, which is what I mean by there being diffuse benefits. If just 2 or 3 of them click, I'm going to be better off tomorrow than I was yesterday. And finally, is it easy? The ease is important for a successful hack because it has to make your life simpler as opposed to more complicated. And I would absolutely argue that this is making my life completely simple. I've already recorded 11 minutes of video content. Had some trouble getting even 1 or 2 minutes before that. So these are the 3 principles that I've identified for what you should consider a successful hack. And I would invite all of you to come up with some of your own favorite hacks and share them with me. Throughout the SuccessCast, I'm interested in featuring them, particularly if they relate to career success, but they can be others. So just by way of example, let's brainstorm. If you're looking for a job right now and having trouble, a very simple hack that you might do is say, before you get your coffee every morning, send out 1 resume. You will find that this is easy because it's going to make it easier because if you're like me, you really want that cup of morning coffee. But on top of that, it's going to provide compounding benefits because if you keep this up after about 2 to 3 weeks, you'll be getting interviews. And if it will have divergent diffuse benefits because you get your coffee in the morning, which is great. But on top of that, as you continue to do this, you're going to see you're learning more about the landscape. You're going to get a lot of experience interviewing. You're going to know what's out there. You're going to figure out how to best tailor your resume. So this is why I've come up with this particular framework. And if you have other ideas for what makes a successful hack, I'll be continuing to update. It's a whiteboard, easy to change. So this generally I would end it here, trying to keep this under 10 minutes as a rule. But because this is the first one, I'm going to go a bit longer because I'd like to take some time to introduce myself and who I am. I've obviously talked a lot about RezScore already, but why should you care about me in particular? And why should you pay attention to this in future installments of our SuccessCast? And rather than just tell you my biography, which I will do in a second, I am going to cover another useful tip, which is just read The Elements of Persuasion by Cialdini. I'm going to be reviewing my biography because I'm going to tell you my credentials, and I hope to gain your trust. Cialdini's work on persuasion identified 6 principles of influence, and there's reciprocity, consistency, scarcity, liking, consensus, and here I'm going to be just attempting to establish my authority as an expert on the subject. And side note, what's great about Cialdini's persuasion research, which is very powerful, is that his techniques of persuasion are so powerful, you can actually tell people you plan to use these principles on them and they will still be successful. So learn these principles and especially look at your job hunt as an opportunity to practice these. There's very few times in life when you'll be able to write a document as explicitly persuasive as a resume. And this is an opportunity to use all of these principles in one fell swoop. Today I'm going to be appealing to authority. I'm going to be demonstrating and talking about some of my credentials and how they apply to what we're trying to build at the SuccessCast and what you can expect from future episodes. So my name is Garrett Hall. In terms of education, I'm fairly well credentialed. I received a degree from Swarthmore in religion and physics, and then I went to MIT where I received an MBA in entrepreneurship and innovation. So I'm very high on the nerd cred, which is going to come in very handy. In particular, as a physicist, I can have a terrible time understanding what's going on in the world, but I'm pretty good at turning physical systems into numerical data and then interpreting numerical data. I'd be lost without it, and it's a technique that I'm going to use frequently in the job search. If you can quantify your job search, you're going to be so much better off. Also, on top of that, I'm a very competent coder. I spend most of my day coding. As a result, we'll be able to delve very deeply into technical topics and cover things like coding skills that you might want to pick up. We'll be able to do, hoping down the line, some supply demand analysis, particular coding skills, see which ones are trending, see which ones you might not want to learn, as a way of basically deciding which coding skill should I pick up. So basically, by grounding all this in kind of this scientific and technical underpinning, we're offering something we've always offered different at RezScore, which is a much more quantitative approach to your job search, as opposed to the just pablum of garbage articles, 10 tips for your resume that someone vomited out in 5 seconds and essentially useless. On top of my academic credentials, I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. But this is through practice, not just through school. So obviously, if you end up listening to this, you are familiar with RezScore. I've also, separate from RezScore, founded several startups. Some have been successful, some massively unsuccessful. Many of the startups' failures have been especially epic, and I would argue that that's a way that that you can trust a lot of the advice I might be able to give about startups, because the experts often get very blinded by their thinking they're infallible in their expertise, whereas in reality they're just essentially overly forming a lot of confirmation bias. So through the entrepreneurial past that I've had, and present and future, I've gotten a lot of expertise at many different levels of a startup. So I know a lot about marketing, know a lot about sales, know a lot about technology. So even though I'm not the best at any of them, I will be able to speak competently when we do future casts on these subjects. And also, as you can see, I'm incredibly beautiful, and that comes in very handy for video streaming. We will be doing this as a podcast, but I recommend you look at me because it's going to be more pleasant. So what should you look out for in some of the upcoming episodes of our SuccessCast? In the not too distant future, I will probably be off next week for some work travel. But in the future, we're going to be doing something I'm excited about, which is a resume roast. We have one very talented user who came to us and said, looking to switch jobs, I am not very satisfied with where I'm at now. Can you help out? And we looked at his resume, and we found a lot of mistakes. It hurts because this guy's incredibly qualified. He has a lot of amazing experience. He's been in government, and he's looking at transitioning out of government to nonprofit or corporate. So if you have any interest, particularly in the nonprofit sector, you're going to want to watch out for this upcoming roast. Additionally, I'm going to be conducting some interviews with people who I think have some very interesting things to say about hacks. So one of which is a colleague of mine from MIT. We almost did a podcast together on the subject of hacks called Hacks on Hacks. And he has figured out a job search hack that has quadrupled his salary over the course of less than 5 years. Again, quadrupled his salary over the course of less than 5 years. And it's amazing because everyone was looking at him and saying, "You're crazy." And he probably is. But he quadrupled his salary, which is probably better than any of you have done. And it nicely fits this framework because it has paying compound benefits. It has diverse benefits, and it's incredibly easy. So be on the lookout for that. Also, hoping to secure an interview with one of our professors at MIT. You'll notice I'm leaning very heavily on a lot of the MIT credentials here. But we're hoping to interview this professor, and if you're watching that cast, that will be interesting because, in particular, this professor is a lot of research and expertise on if you are trying to apply for jobs from a minority position. It can be very difficult, and he's done a lot of research on the subject. So that's what's coming up. I see that actually Severin, who you might recognize from that video that I cited earlier, he's the data science genius who is building this Word2Vec tool, has just joined. Hi, Sev. Unfortunately, you came at the very end. As I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to keep it under 10 minutes, and right now we're at 20. But we will be hoping to get Sev on the phone in future of these casts. So, my name is Garrett Hall. We covered a couple of things. We covered the anatomy of what makes for a successful life or career hack. And we briefly touched on one of the 6 principles of influence by Cialdini. We discussed authority. I hope I was able to convey to you some of my credentials on this, in particular why my failing and trying many new startups will offer a very good perspective here. We'd like to hear directly from you. We've built out an entire service based on your feedback. So please tell us what you'd like or dislike about this, what you'd like to see more of, what you'd like to see less of, what you'd like us to build out in the site, because we are literally powered by your feedback. So again, thanks for listening to the first ever RezScore SuccessCast.